are making Chevron quilt blocks with my 10-inch slicer ruler. I have the chat here on my iPad, saying hi to some friends real quick. Hi, Miss Bernadine, tuning in from New Orleans. We have Shanika's in from New York. Hi, everybody. Awesome. If you can see me and hear me, just go ahead and drop us a quick line in the comments, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, so we know everything is good, technology-wise. And I know y'all see me with my pajama t-shirt on already. Anybody recognize this top? From my Jali jean PJ class. This is the short sleeve hack. So I'm just wearing this with some leggings. Comfy. We're going to do a movie night after this. After I get off live, we're going to make some dinner. But I am kind of on a mini quilt kick right now. You probably know that I recently launched and then closed the doors on my Clammy Quilt Club. So we've been making mini quilts. We're on the second project already, and I have an entire corner of my sewing studio here. I come to you weekly, Wednesdays and Fridays, from North Central Florida, and I have a whole corner that I need to fill up with mini quilts. So I thought, well, why not work on a little chevron shaped quilt block and put 4 of the blocks together and make a little mini quilt that I can also add to my wall. So that's what we're going to be working on. I wanted to show you a sample, and I'll talk a little bit about the 10-inch slicer for those of you that are maybe new. This is a ruler that I designed, 6 years ago now, and I designed it to be used specifically with pre-cut fabric squares, the 10-inch by 10-inch ones. So like layer cakes, tiles, the different fabric manufacturers call them different names that are trademarked. So whatever company you're getting them from, but the 10-inch by 10-inch pre-cut squares. And so when you order the ruler, we have them in stock in our online shop. We were sold out for a long time last year, but we got them back in. And there's a label right on the ruler, and this has a link where you can go and basically scroll through pictures and video tutorials on different ways that you can use the ruler, again, with 10-inch by 10-inch pre-cut fabric square. So the link is in the YouTube description box if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, we're putting the link in the chat for you as well. A lot of different ways that you can use the ruler. Today, I'm just going to focus on the chevron block, okay? So if you have one and it's just in your stash of rulers, you're going to get to see a cool new way to use your ruler. Now, I'm going to stand back and hold up this mini quilt that my friend Stacy made years ago for me as a sample. And so if you see, it kind of has like all these little transportation fabric prints in it, but you can see like the white background bike fabric here, and it has like little ambulance and fire trucks and stuff like that. It almost creates like a little pathway, and so that's what I'm calling the chevron, is the skinny lines that are delineating the different sections, okay? So that's a little sample there. We're going to start working on the block so I can show you how I use the 10-inch slicer to cut mine up. My allergies are on 1,000 today, so we're probably not going to be on for too long. But let's go ahead and switch over to my over-the-shoulder camera shot so we can show them the quilt on the table like this. And I'll talk a little bit about this. Awesome. All right, so you can see, overall, it just looks like roads, which is super cool for like a little transportation quilt, right? For a little kid. So let me show you where the blocks begin and where they end. And of course, this has not even been bound. Don't judge me. This is just a sample. But here's the one block. Okay? We have these 2 fabrics that make up the background, and then the little skinny strip here is what I call the slice. So in the most basic way that we use my 10-inch slicer ruler, and if you go to the link that's listed on here when you get the ruler, you'll see that one as your first block, first quilt to tackle with the ruler. I call it the sliced quilt. So this block, if we look above it here, the little slice connects here, but it's going in the opposite direction, so it creates kind of like a little bounce back, a little chevron type of shape. But again, it's the same block right here. Background, background, and the little sliced bit. Okay? Same thing here. She matched up the 2 dark blue fabrics, so this almost looks like a path now that's being accentuated on each side with one of these skinnier strips. Let me make sure I put up all this. Okay? Oh, Rebecca says she got her ruler many years ago. A lot of you did. It was first featured, I think, in Quilty Box years ago, maybe 2014, 2015, something like that. All right, so here are the 2 blocks that I've made already, and I kind of love the way that these fabrics look together. Weird, right? And funky, but super cool. So I'm thinking of doing the opposite here. So there is a block that I make, and I have a tutorial for it with the ruler called the lava lamp block is what I call it. So this is almost going to be like the big version of it, made up of 4 blocks. All right, so let me show you how I did this. Now, check it out. I'm currently obsessed with this because, like I said, I'm making a ton of mini quilts, and in my clammy quilt club, we're working on all the curves using the clammy ruler, this guy. And so this is really helpful because we can place the ruler on fabric, any ruler or template, especially the ones that have different shapes, and I can turn it any which way that I need to arrange my fabric pieces and rotary cutter in a way that's comfortable for me and that is pretty safe. So this Martelli rotating cutting mat is what I've been using. We're currently sold out. We just sold the last one we had, but I set it in our online shop to back order because I just got shipping notification that we're getting 10 more in. So if you like this mat, it's quite expensive. I thought the same thing, but after a couple of friends swore by it, I spent the dollars and it's amazing. Okay, so I'm going to be using this one today just because it's smaller and it's two things in one. So this is the cutting mat, but then it also has an ironing surface underneath. And then this third part is the rotating mat. So you can have it like this. All right, super cool, super kind of expensive, but I think worth every penny. Okay, so here goes. To cut the background pieces, and so here's something to note. I did say earlier that I designed my 10-inch slicer to be used with 10-inch by 10-inch pre-cut squares of fabric because they usually, you know, they come in a whole collection. You usually get about 40 to 45 different squares in each one. You know that the fabrics coordinate, and so do I need to scoot over? Where am I in the bubble? Can't. Oh, okay, I'm okay there. Good. And so that's one way to go about it, right? Just buy a stack or check in your stash. A lot of us have the pre-cut squares already, or you can cut your own. So that's what I did here. I had a little bit of yardage left, and so I cut the pieces myself. Now, to get the chevron shape, you need to cut some of the background squares pretty side of the fabric face up, and some of them pretty side face down. So I like to do it just 2 at a time. If you cut too many at once, it ends up getting a little bit out of control because, you know, if you have a blunt blade in your rotary cutter, then it's going to, excuse me, y'all. Oh my goodness, my allergies. Okay. The blade is going to affect how many layers of fabric you're able to cut through. So if you have a brand new one, then go for it. But if not, just stick to one. Just remember that you need to cut some face up and some face down. So notice what I did. Some face up and some face down is just one of each. So this one is face up. This guy is face down. Now I'm going to grab my 10-inch slicer. Make sure that the edges are all aligned. And let me see. Okay, good. You can see me. So I'm going to take the ruler. I'm just lining it up flush on 3 sides, here, here, and here. And now with this, my rotating mat, you see, like if it was aligned in front of me, this is kind of a little bit awkward for my hand. So instead I turn it to anywhere that I want it to be so that I can put downward pressure on the ruler and then cut here. Okay, now I need to cut on the opposite side. Whoops. So I'm just going to spin this around and place my ruler down on the opposite side. Again, flush with 3 sides here. So this is what we have left over. These are the little, what did I call them? Slices, like the little strips that you end up having in the middle. And then these pieces, the one on top is going to go like that. And this guy goes like that, okay? And you probably can't see that, but you kind of can. Kind of can. Now for the strips in the middle, if you're wanting to go like this and have the little chevron pieces that go in different, you know, the different opposite directions, my recommendation to you is to first start off with a solid fabric, because that way you can cut them all from one of these squares like I'm about to do, and then there's no right or wrong side to the fabric, so it's going to be easier for you to be like, oh wait, where does this one go? And if it doesn't fit the same angle, you can just flip it, okay? So here, I'm going to start off on one corner. Let me scoot this up. Okay, so I'll start on one corner because I'm trying to keep the same asymmetrical angle of the template, and I just need to cut out more strips of it. For me, I just need 2 really, because this mini is just going to have 2 little blocks. All right, so this obviously does not match anything that I have. It's not going in the project. Then for the next one, and let me zoom in the other way. Okay, because I want to show you exactly where I'm aligning it. So this is the wider end of the ruler. This is the narrower end. So on the narrow end, I'm measuring from here to the 1 1/4 inch line. And I put that 1 1/4 inch line right on the tip of my fabric, with lined up with the bottom edge, okay? And then at the top here, I'm going to just tip, tip, tip. And the edge of the fabric there is right where the 5-inch mark is. Does that make sense? Like that, okay? Let me zoom out a little bit to show y'all the full strip width. Oop, not there. Okay, so at the 1 1/4 there, and up here goes this edge up to 5. So again, now I'm gonna turn this so I can cut. Whoop, and then I moved it, of course I did. Right there, and I'm just gonna cut 2 strips. And each strip is gonna be aligned the exact same way. So this is one, and let me put this here with that one, and I'm gonna cut another one the same way, and you would just keep cutting across. I believe you can get 5 across one 10-inch square. But you can also cut yourself a 10-inch strip, right? If you're cutting it from yardage, and just do it that way also. All right, and aligning it up here and here. Perfect. Okay, so these 2 strips. Now, we're gonna grab the first 2 that we cut right of our background fabric. And now let me see which one, if this is gonna go here or here, because I want this here. Okay, I'll just turn it over when I get to the end. Great. So here's this. Now you want to grab a strip and place it in here the way that it's going to be once it's finished. And if you look at that, that does not fit flush across the top there, so I know that that does not go there. So because it's a solid fabric, if I flip it over, now we're talking. Okay, so you see how that works? So line it up so everything is flush like this visually first. It's going to be a little off because you're going to eat up some fabric in the seam allowance, but now we're at least ready to glue baste these edges into place, right, to our strip. So here I have a bunch of different products. Okay, I have lapel stick, which I don't even think they make anymore. This is a glue stick by Soline. A lot of people use it for English paper piecing. We have just the washable Elmer's glue. And then this is the white glue in a bottle with a fine tip on it. And then also just the Elmer's washable glue, the regular school glue stick, okay? So any of those options will work fine. Quilters have been using them for a long, long time, okay? And they don't mess up your project at all. Ugh. My allergies, y'all. Okay, so now I'm going to use the Elmer's glue for this one. And now I'm on the ironing surface, okay, of my Martelli mat here. So I'm just going to do little teensy beads of glue in the seam allowance. Try to avoid going all the way over this way because then that's going to affect your fabric. It's going to be like all stiff with glue there. All right. Now I take my strip, and that same edge that was lined up visually is now going to go here. And I'm going to show you in a second, once I have this on, how you line it up. Because at the beginning, some people get confused because you see how the strip of fabric is like off. Just line it up, point of that strip to point of that strip. Forget about what's here because it's an asymmetrical strip. So once you press it out the other way after it's sewn, it'll be right, okay? So just there, there, there. And then my iron, I'm going to set my glue with a hot, dry iron. Hi, Grace. Thanks for tuning in. She says she's late, but she's here. Awesome. Mary says she loves the picture-in-picture. Okay, great. So if you have the 10-inch slice already, let me know in the comments below. I want to see who's going to give this a try with the chevron kind of angled strips. It's super fun. That's right. Tina says allergies mean spring. Seriously. Definitely no snow here in Florida. Today was like the sunny day after a lot of rain. And yeah, it's pretty bad. I've been sneezing all day. Okay. Jennifer's asking about a link to the glue applicator tip. I don't have one yet. We're currently trying to source one because my source from years ago stopped selling these, and so actually my friend Laura is on it. She's found a distributor for this, and so I will keep y'all posted because I know those of you in my Climby Quilt Club are also looking for it. But you can use the regular tip that comes on here. I have this on here because I've had it for like 6 or 7 years, and I go from bottle to bottle as I use them up, okay? But yeah, I will share that with y'all when we do find a source for that. Okay, so that one is glue basted in place. Okay, now I'm going to go to the sewing machine. Well, I'm going to bring my sewing machine over this way, and I'm going to stitch this down using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, let me grab my little Juki here, and I'm using the Juki LB5020. We do have these back in stock. This is the machine that I use every single week here, every Wednesday on WIP Wednesdays because it's lightweight. It's easy for me to bring up here, but as y'all have seen, I've had this machine here. We're on WIP Wednesday number 24. I've made clothes. Did I make this one on here? This is cover stitched. This is cover stitched. And I serged it. No, so I didn't make this one on here, but I've made clothes on here, lightweight, medium weight, double knits. We've made little handbag projects. We've quilted stuff on here. So now we're working on a quilt block. So I love it because I can do any of the funky projects and stuff that I like to do right on it. All right, so I'm going to move the needle position over because I need to set it to 1/4 inch. And on this machine, I can do that. So I'm going to go to width. And I believe, I'm trying to look and see. Let's try 6.5. That looks like pretty close to 1/4 inch, if not like a scant 1/4 inch, which is fine. All right, so, oh, it's kind of narrow. Whatever, we'll keep with that one. So now I'm just stitching down right where I basted. And I like glue basting, especially for a strip like this. It's not cut on a true bias, but it is cut on an angle, so there definitely is some give. So if you're someone who just like places the two pieces of fabric together and starts like pulling on it and distorting it, then you're gonna see that you're gonna obviously distort the strip. And the skinnier the piece of fabric, the easier it is to distort. So glue basting is just a quick, and it's pretty quick and an easy way too. Especially if you're making a lot of these blocks, you just do it assembly line style. It's pretty simple. All right, so I stitched that one down. Let's press it real quick. So again, with my little mat here, I always like to press my seams just as they were sewn first. And then I'm going to press toward the bigger fabric, okay? Not necessarily the darker, because I would say that the strip in the middle is darker, but I'm just going to press to the bigger fabric. Okay, my clapper. We're currently sold out of clappers, y'all. Everybody's been snatching them up, but we should be getting some soon. It's set to back order, so as soon as we can get them back in stock, we'll definitely be filling all those back orders. And I'm just pulling it to make sure there's no fabric bubbled up over here. Good. So now the next one goes here, okay? So whatever glue we want to use. Let's go with the lapel stick. Why not? Just be mindful that if you are using any of these glues that have like a stick of some sort, like these glue sticks, that you don't like push down and then swipe, because again, that's the angle, not a true bias, but it's still cut on an angle. So if you're like really pressing down and scooting it that way, you can easily distort the fabric edge as well. So I'm kind of just like rubbing it. And you don't need to cover the entire span of the edge, like I did with the washable Elmer's liquid glue, just a couple dots, you know, just something to hold it. And then here again, you're going to have points that stick out, but just match it tip to tip with the strip that's underneath. Because nothing is going to be exactly right. We started off with the same size piece of fabric, the 10 inch by 10 inch, right? But every time we cut and we sew, we're changing the dimensions because you're eating up fabric in that seam allowance, okay? So I get that a lot at first. People are like, why does it not match? It's like, it's not going to. You have asymmetrical angles, you have seam allowances that are getting, you know, affecting the finished size of the fabric. So there is going to be a little bit of trimming to do, but not much. Okay. So now let's stitch this one up too. That tail got caught around the presser foot. Okay. Let's keep going. Now let's press this one, and I'll show you how to trim it up, okay? And then we're going to make one more. The strip is going to be the exact same steps. It's just that the strip is going in the opposite direction, right? Because we need it to go boom, and then kind of bounce back and be reflected on itself to get that chevron shape. Mary Grace says she's using her clapper today, and every time she sets it down, she says clap on, then clap off. She says she likes to have fun when she's sewing. So the same way that I press the seam allowance towards the bigger fabric, which is the pink background here, I'm going to do the same thing to this side too. Oh. Okay. And you can see that everything looks good. The only thing is that you're a little bit off up here, because each step that we're adding or sewing a new piece to it, that needs to then be cleaned up and trimmed off. So I will show you what I do. And another cool feature of my 10-inch slicer ruler is that I also use it to trim up my blocks. So on this side, you can see how there's like a little bit staggered, right? It's a little bit off right there. So I'm just going to use this right angle corner, line it up with the right angle of my corner, the same way that we would grab like a big square ruler, right? To square up your blocks. But I use the same ruler. That way I don't have to really be reaching for anything else. And then I'm lining up the ruler all the way flush here. So it's nice and straight. And then whatever's sticking out is what I'm going to trim away. Okay. So that's it, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the opposite side. These edges do not need to be trimmed because those are the fresh, raw edges where you cut the 10" by 10" square piece of fabric. So you didn't do anything to that. It's just here where we have sewn pieces to it, and then the seam allowance throws things off a little bit. That just needs to be barely cleaned up and trimmed, okay? So use the 90-degree angle of the ruler to clean up your blocks. So this is what we would call a sliced block, right? This is kind of the most easiest, basic way to use my 10" slicer. But then remember I said if you cut some face up and some face down, then we're going to get this, and I'll show you again for those of you that are just tuning in, is this kind of chevron shape where that same strip is now reflected. It's almost like the mirror is here. It's a mirror image of it here, so then it bounces the other direction, okay? So let's do the same thing with this. First, we line everything up visually the way it will look once it's completely sewn together. And for me, it's going to be like that. Okay? So now I'm going to grab my basting glue. And you can use pins if you don't have glue on hand, okay? This is just, you know, sharing extra little tips with y'all, especially if we have people that are new to quilting or want to try some of these projects. It's cool to see because, especially if you have kids or you do crafts, you probably got this stuff. All right. And like I said, we have the Martelli rotating mats. It's like a 3-piece mat. You got to get the base underneath, then the ironing board, and then the rotating mat on top. I love it. If you do classes or retreats or anything like that, if you are starting to do them already, this is perfect because you don't need to have the big square rectangular mats. And if you've used those other rotating mats in the past, you know that they're not like this, like they're not raised up. You know, you kind of have to get your hand underneath in that little small edge to turn it. This is like, I'm obsessed. Expensive, but totally worth it. Okay, so yeah, so we have them back ordered. I've seen some of you already were ordering them. As soon as we get them in, I already got shipping notifications, so when they're back in stock, we'll just start shipping these orders out ASAP because it is a super handy little tool. Okay, so let's go ahead and stitch this one next. Isn't this fun? And it's a good little scrap buster. Even if you're cutting your own yardage, it's not bad. Just cut a bunch of 10" wide strips, you know, and then subcut them down to 10" squares. It makes really good for like if you have a lot of different types of fabrics in smaller chunks of smaller yardage pieces, make a really cool kind of scrappy quilt. Okay. And there's only 2 seams per block. Hello. You know we love that. I ain't trying to spend months making a quilt. Okay. Oh, awesome. Debbie says she's watching and cooking dinner at the same time. I wish I could do that, but I'm about to go cook dinner after I get off of here. I'm glad you're making time to tune in. All right. So you saw I pressed it flat the same way it was sewn, and then I'm pressing again to the bigger chunk of fabric. Okay. Okay, and so remember when I mentioned earlier, if you're just tuning in, if you're going to be trying this technique, I suggest that you start off with the little chevron strips here being a solid fabric because it's kind of easy to get a little confused with the way that you're placing the 10" slicer to cut the strips, but if you cut them out of a solid, you can just flip it the other way and nobody will ever know, especially if you end up with too many that were cut in one direction over the other for the blocks that you need, all that. So just start off with a solid for the middle. Okay. So see, I even use this. This is a pressing mat, but I even use it. It's like a movable work table, right? So it's easier for me to put the glue this way, but now I want to place this on top, and I don't want to have to turn my arms this way. I just bring it to me. I'm telling you, it's pricey, but I'm really, really happy with it. Okay. Now we'll set the glue with our hot dry iron. Oh, bye, Nancy. She says it's far past her bedtime. I'm guessing she's in the UK because this is a little bit late for those of you. Huh? Oh, in Nigeria. Woo! Even later. Got it. Thanks for tuning in. All right, let's go ahead and stitch this one up. And if you're not super duper consistent with your seam allowance, try the glue basting technique, because like if your seam allowance is a little bit off, you don't want to add to that by distorting the strip. Then you can really get even more stuff going wrong. So try the glue basting and then just set some type of a guide or follow the edge of your presser foot like I'm doing here once I have the needle set to that to a good 1/4 inch position. And the key is it's not really important that it's exactly a 1/4 inch or a scant 1/4 inch or whatever. The key is to be consistent, right? Because if you're eating up different amounts of seam allowances on each side of the strips, then the strips are not going to match up when you go to sew them where they join and make that chevron shape. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, I'm going to flip this and press to the bigger pink fabric as well. Heather says, I think it would be super cute with the 5-inch slicer. It would be, you just have to play around with it a little bit more, because the 5-inch slicer, you can't really put it on both sides of a block and end up with a skinny strip like this. When you do that with the 5-inch slicer, you get a chunkier strip in the middle. So it would be cool to cut it on both sides, and then like I did with the solid here where I just cut my own individual strips. That would be cool to do. You just kind of decide how wide you want that strip to be, find that spot on your 5-inch slicer, and then continue it across. Now for those of you wondering, and I don't think I have one here, but I also have the little brother to the 10-inch slicer, which is a 5-inch slicer that I also designed, and that was designed to be used with 5-inch by 5-inch pre-cut squares. So like the little charms, okay? So we do have both rulers in stock right now. So thanks for reminding me about that. I almost forgot to mention the little guy. All right, so again, we're taking our 10-inch slicer. I'm going to clean up the corners here, right? Square up my block. And notice I'm cleaning this up, but I don't want to take off a bunch from everywhere. I only want to take off the little bit that's sticking up from where I sewed. I still want to keep this height, right? Because the whole point of using pre-cuts with my ruler is that you have 0 waste. I mean, this is it. Okay, the point is that when you're buying, especially if you're buying it in an actual pre-cut stack, you're paying a premium. A lot of people don't know this, but those pre-cuts are more expensive because it's U.S. labor. Like they have to be cut here in the United States. So you're paying a premium because people pre-cut them, wrapped them up, and made them look all cute for you. So the way I came up with the design of the ruler is that I had a lot of my students saying, hey, I have all these 10-inch squares, but every time I look up a pattern, you can go ahead and put it to my face for a minute, Brandon. They would say, like, I have all these 10-inch square stacks of fabric, but every time you look up a pattern, it's like, yeah, you need 1 of those stacks or 2 of those stacks, but then you also need 3.5 yards of a background fabric. And it's hard when you're a quilter or just a maker of any kind, right? When inspiration strikes, you want to start right then. And not that many of us, I think, as quilters, unless you make a lot of quilts that you stack up on backing fabric, it's hard to find a quilter that just has like a lot of different 3.5 yardage cuts, right? So that was kind of the reason I designed this. I was like, well, if you're paying a premium, let's go ahead and use all of the 10-inch square that you're using in a way that you could create a variety of different quilt blocks and quilt designs without needing additional yardage. And so that's where the idea for this ruler came from, okay? Tamara says, both the 5-inch and 10-inch slicers are perfect with pre-cut squares and there's almost no fabric waste, which is great. Thank you, Tamara. That's exactly why I created them. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Let me move my mat. And this is cool because once you have these blocks done, you can decide, okay, am I going to have them like this? Am I going to go 2 this way and then 2 this way? And you can play around. It's just like a swapping, fun, design your own quilt adventure with these blocks. So this is what I had in mind. Super cute. I think I'm going to bind it with this solid aqua too. So imagine for quilting how fun it would be to have like a design going up and down to kind of accentuate this whole area. Super fun. Okay, so this is how I'm going to do mine. So next step is obviously oh my gosh, I love the way the colors pop on camera. Isn't this fun? And all you need is 4 blocks, y'all. I'm sure y'all have yardage in your stash to do this. This is like a fat 1/4 of each or something, okay? So I need to sew this to this. So again, we're placing it in front of us the same way that it's going to look visually when it's done. And that way the angles won't confuse you and you know that if this needs to finish here, Don't move it, don't flip it, don't do nothing. Just put it right onto the other one, and we're going to match up right there with a pin. For the blocks, I don't bother to glue baste. I just go ahead and go like this. And then I push the seam allowances towards the pink fabric on both, so my seams are not really nesting in here, but you can do it differently, right? You can press the seams in towards one stripe and then out on another block, and then they would abut nicely. But if you're consistent with your seam allowance, I mean, I can see that right there. It matches up perfectly. Let me stop saying perfectly, because when I go to sew this, then I'm going to turn it out and show you, and then it won't match with my luck. We'll try it and see. But just like that. And I'm just putting a pin on either side of that strip where I want them to match up. The rest of this, I mean, it's not a long seam at all. Easy peasy to sew. Oh, Alicia says beautiful colors. Thank you. I love it. I love, love, love high contrast fabrics. Y'all know me. I need a good pop of color. I don't care if the colors are opposite of the color wheel, if they match, if they're complementary. I don't care. If one is bright, or one plays as the dark and one plays as the light, I'm getting enough visual interest that I love it, and I'm going with it. All right. So for this, I'm going to go almost to right till I get to the pin. Make sure I'm stopping with that needle down. Okay, pull that last one out, and then just finish it off. Okay, let's see. My snips. Here you are. Oh my gosh, I hope I sewed these good. Let's see. It's kind of weird to look at it too from a higher angle, but it should be all right. So I press it first just like I sewed it, and then we're going to open up. Let me peek. Ooh, girl, you did great. Perfect. So here you can obviously press the seam allowance to one side or the other, or if you use a shorter stitch length when you're stitching, like 2 millimeters or even 1.8, then you might find it helpful to just press your seam allowance open. And this is something I always share. If you're going to want to press it open, make sure that you're using a shorter stitch length, because if you're using a bigger stitch length, you're kind of weakening that seam. Like you can see almost little gaps in between the individual stitches, and I just don't like to open it up like that and when I stitch with bigger stitches. But y'all, this is going to lie super flat. Oh my gosh, look at that. Hold on. I don't know if y'all can see this. Let's zoom in a little bit to that perfection. There's nothing more satisfying than that. As a quilter, come on. Am I right or am I right? Whew. It's just like only quilters will understand, you know, people that sew, if you make projects, you get it, you get it. All right, and so then this is my mini, whoop, let's zoom out. So that's my mini, and then I would obviously just stitch them together down the middle, and we can go ahead and do that. And so for stuff like this, because it's not that big, I mean, I do pretty good with no pins, but if there's a point that's like, it has to match up, you definitely want to put a pin there. So for this, for example, I would put a pin right here at the intersection of the two strips where those two seams meet up, because I want them to be nice and on point, crisp together, but then the rest I probably wouldn't pin, right? And that just comes with time or whatever you feel comfortable with. It is. You see? Everybody's saying it's so satisfying. I'm telling you, perfection. It's true. It's just like, you got to take a moment there, just stare at it and be like, I did good. All right. So let's stitch this up. Y'all, I'm literally done with the mini quilt. This mini quilt top is done. This is nothing. If you have the 10-inch slicer, definitely give it a go. If you don't have it, we have a link for you in the description box of the YouTube video, as well as the Facebook page here. You can find it in our shop too. And even if you just do a Google search, if you type in Crafty Gemini 10-inch slicer, it'll pop right up for you. We've been selling this ruler for like 6 years already. So a lot of y'all have them. And there's a lot of other ways that you can use it. This is just, you know, my way of showing you another way to switch up the little stripes or the slices of it and make yourself a quick and easy mini quilt. And you can imagine if you just repeated this, right? Say you did 4 sections like this. I have 4 blocks here. So if you did 4, 4, 4, and 4, that would be like a super cool, fresh, kind of modern looking mini quilt. I mean, mini quilt, baby quilt, right? And then you just decide on how many blocks you want and boom. repeat the steps. Easy peasy. All right, I'm just going to give this a press. I just wanted to go ahead and finish it already. Why not? Press it just as it was sewn, just like I tell kids when I teach them. Press it just like you sewed it, and then press the seam allowance, whichever way you're doing it. You know, open to whatever side. So like that. How cute! Oh my gosh, super cute. I'm just going to press the seam allowance to one side. It's just one join right there in the middle. I don't think I need to bother with trying to press it open. It's no big deal. And it's not bulky enough to affect my quilting when I get around to quilting it. Okay. Oh my gosh. Linda says, I'm inspired to take the shrink wrap off my 10-inch slicer. That is the funniest thing I've heard all day, Linda. And I'm glad that you're thinking about doing it. You definitely got to put that ruler to work. Oh my gosh, this is super cute. And then imagine I have the binding around the edge like that. That's going to look really pretty. All right. So there is that. Hopefully that gives you some more ideas for those of you that have the ruler. And if you don't have it, you can get it from us in the online shop. Awesome. Look how cute. You can go ahead and put the other camera shot while I take a sip of my water. How cute. And super easy, okay? I just used 4 background squares that measured 10 inch by 10 inch, and then 1 square of the aqua fabric for the strips that measured 10 inch by 10 inch. Easy peasy, okay? And you end up with this little mini quilt, all right? So I'm gonna go ahead and see any other questions that I have on here, but that's it. I'm so glad that this was such a quick and easy demo, and I wanted to share that with you in case you also have a corner in your sewing space or a hallway in your house or apartment that you want to start throwing up some mini quilts on. I think this was super fun. Let's see. Sheila's asking, will you use the long arm to quilt it? Maybe. These are so easy to throw on. Like for me, on the long arm, I just float the quilt. Don't judge me. Some people don't like to float, but it's so small that I can literally just throw this on the long arm and like 5 to 10 minutes have it quilted, as long as I'm not doing anything like really fancy or custom. But it's super cute and easy to do. This would be awesome, actually, because of these angles. This would be fun to do on the long arm with rulers, right? Like echoing the chevron shape, doing some cool stuff on the inside. Oh, super fun. And it's a fun way if you don't have a long arm and you just want to do some free motion quilting on a sit down, like on your regular machine, because it's small enough, right? And you can use the strips here to kind of delineate some of the sections, right? So if you say, okay, I need to quilt something bigger in here, this is kind of like your borders. Like, don't do anything there. Just focus on quilting in the center area. Then you could do what? Like stitch in the ditch just around here. If you wanted to hand quilt it, super cute. Also, you could echo the shape, that inside shape, super fun. Okay, Anne says she has a 10-inch. Janet says, what is the name of the thing you use after ironing? So Janet, this is called a tailor's clapper, and they're on back order right now in our online shop, but we definitely sell them. We go through so many of these. People are buying them all the time. I use them for pressing down hems on my garments, as well as my quilt block seams when I'm piecing quilts. Okay, so that's that. All right, so thank you everybody who tuned in. I don't see any little pressing questions right here at the end, but I hope that you all will tune in this Friday as well. We go live twice a week here. Wednesdays now at 5 p.m. Eastern, and then Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern as well. So definitely click the subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube. And you can even head over to my website at CraftyGemini.com and add yourself to the email list, because I always send out reminder emails telling you date and time when we're going live. So if you're catching this one late or you're watching the recording and you want to try and catch it live next time, my email newsletter is the place you want to be. All right? So thank you everybody for tuning in. Grab your 10-inch slicer so you can make a mini quilt or a bigger quilt yourself, and I will see you on Friday.